This is a sample agenda of when we talk to congressmen. You know, we thank them, we introduce ourselves, we show appreciation and gratitude, and then we have an ask. And if they indicate that they won't go for that ask, then we have a secondary ask. We leave material, we schedule a follow-up, we ask them what we could do better, and it's a great respectful approach to dealing with the most important people in our country, our elected representatives, because they're the only ones that can make a difference on this issue. This is the thing I was building to, the conservative case for carbon dividends. This came from the Climate Leadership Council, and it's made up of James A. Baker, George Shultz, both prominent secretaries of state during the Reagan administration. These are respected Republicans. We've got Rob Walton, one of the Walmart heirs. We've got Henry Paulson, banker. Gregory Mancow is like a hero to conservatives with his economic policies. And he is in favor of, what's amazing is these folks have come out in favor of a carbon fee and dividend. But their plan is much more stringent than ours. They want to start at $40 a ton. We want to start at $15 a ton. They want to start at $40 a ton, but then only go up 3% a year, whereas we want to go up 10% a year. And our plan actually would get us more results quicker, but we are happy to go with their plan. Of course, the only drawback is that they want to get rid of Obama-era regulations. And you know what? That's okay, because a price on carbon does everything that putting standards on the amount of mileage a car can get, or the amount of CO2 a coal plant can emit. Putting a price on carbon will accomplish all of those things. So we're in full support of this, and this is what our senators, we need to be pointing our senators to, is this Climate Leadership Council. Faith groups, if you're involved in a faith group, get involved and help your fellows to engage in this issue. This is a crisis. This is a plague, and it is creeping up on us faster than we know. Every major denomination has come out with their leadership supporting action on climate change. The Interfaith Power and Light organization provided me with this information, and I was just bowled over and pleased to see this. I'm a big proponent of Pope Francis, but I'm just as thrilled about the things that other denominations are doing. And this is a particularly important individual. She's on our board of directors, and this is in conclusion. I have 2 more slides after this, I think, or 3. But Catherine Hayhoe is an atmospheric scientist, but she's also an evangelical Christian, and she teaches at the University of Texas climate science. She says, as individuals, our choices control more than 1/3 of U.S. carbon emissions. The rest is out of our control, but not as constituents. And that's why CCL is so important. It gives the ordinary citizen voice to tell our elected officials that we want a price on carbon. And she also talks about how science, you know, basically scares people, and that doesn't motivate people. What motivates people is love and care for our fellow man and one another. And that's the only thing that science can't measure, is that love that we have as Christians for one another and for the people around the world. Another member of our board of directors is James Hansen. He's probably the foremost voice on the issue of climate change. He was the director of the Goddard Space Institute from '81 to 2013, and he's now at Columbia University. You know, the man thinks that Citizens Climate Lobby is the absolute ideal approach for addressing climate change. That's why I joined it, is because it's so simple, it's so transparent. So, the key takeaways, it's commonly agreed, fair solution, charge to pollute, and then return all the funds to the people. It's a win-win. It's right for both the economy and the environment. The only holdup is the political process, and CCL's answer is to create political will, and that's what I'm trying to do, but I'm having a heck of a time doing it, because people are, they're not engaging in this issue. They're hiding out from this issue. And yet we could be doing so much, talking to Lynn Jenkins and talking to Jerry Moran, and really putting their feet to the fire and getting our fellow citizens involved. So Lene, one of the things she professed quite a bit is never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can change the world, because indeed it's the only thing that ever has. And I was going to reread the last line of Rusty Schweikert's story, but I can't read it. But you guys got the gist of how incredibly moved he was looking down on our holy earth, and how important it is to all of us, how this planet sits out here in the middle of this huge universe, and there's really nothing else for us to go to other than our planet Earth. And we've got to protect it and care for it as much as we possibly can. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys today. If anybody has any questions.
I would like to put something out there. One is in response to your question, and this may be a resource that you didn't know about, Tony. There is an article online called Climate Change Opinion by Country, and a Gallup poll taken in 2007 to 2008 at 128 countries. And their thoughts of their responses based on how aware they are of climate change, whether they think humans are part of the impact, and whether they think it's a serious threat. And actually, the United States has one of the largest, 97% of those polled are aware of it. 49% thinks humans are part of the problem, a big part of the problem, and 63% think it's a big threat, and that's quite a bit higher than many countries. So when we think of our country as not on board, really it's that we've allowed a tiny number of very fearful and very wanting to hold on to their wealth kind of folks to be in charge. That's really it. And also, I want you to be aware of another thing online called the Yale Project for Climate Change Communication. That project is doing some incredible research on attitudes on a lot of different subjects, but including climate change, that whether you identify yourself as Republican or Democrat or Independent, they are showing the range of ways that people look at some of these issues. And recently, my brother actually just sent me a link from a recent Yale Project study that showed that in the United States, the majority of people do think climate change is happening. They do think it's a huge threat both to the U.S. and the world. They do not think it will affect them personally. So we have to wake people up to a threat that is not something you see with your eyes right in front of you. You see it changing enough every day to make a difference. We have to wake people up to the type of threat it is, and that in fact it will affect every one of us.
Wonderful. Anybody got a question? Yes, sir.
You know, 12 years ago, 20 years ago, we heard a lot of talk about a tipping point, that the ice would melt, the Earth would gradually present a darker face to the sun, and the pace of global warming would accelerate, and we'd all die.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't been talking about a tipping point. Do you think no such thing exists, or what?
Oh no, well it definitely exists. I don't think it helps to scare people to death, but James Hansen is much more of an alarmist along those lines than, for instance, the IPCC, the International Panel of Climate Change, which was used to set the Paris Agreement standards. And by the way, that general, the brigadier general that I spoke about at the library, he said that the IPCC was the most useful and advanced piece of intelligence the U.S. military has ever received from any source. It's the most vetted, it's the most complete, it's the most long-ranging study that they've ever seen. And it is 100% convincing. 97% of scientists agree with it. Yes, we are trying to avoid that tipping point. We're trying to keep the temperature below 2 degrees if we can cut CO2 emissions by 80% by mid-century. And that's all we have to go on. I mean, if we don't do that, the planet won't be able to support 9 billion people that'll be here by then, you know.
And we're also concerned about, you know, in addition to humans dying, there's ecosystem collapse of all types that are possible. And once ecosystems start collapsing, there's no way of knowing where that ends.
And we don't realize the implications of that, and yet they're huge. For farming,
what will be the impact of having an EPA director who literally does not believe that climate change exists?
Right, right. We're in a tough time right now. But
No kidding.
if they would pass a carbon fee and dividend, it would be a huge step forward going around the EPA, because the Republicans hate regulations. They hated cap and trade. I don't think California's cap and trade, you know, we've got some of our largest CCL chapters out in California, and yet they've got cap and trade going out there. But they recognize that carbon fee is the answer. Regulations are so hard because it's telling people what they can and can't do.
Has it ever been voted on in the legislature?
Carbon fee and dividend? No, never got up to
So
a
it's never
vote.
been,
It's been submitted by Democrats many times in various forms, but there has been this climate denial. Well, so many white papers have flooded the congressional offices. We only became aware of how powerful Heritage Foundation and, you know, all of these huge front groups for the Kochs really are, with the amount of stuff that they flood our congressional offices with and the money they spend. But we're countering that, and we're starting to, you know, step up our game to where they can hear the research that they actually funded. But yeah, you know, that the tipping point is the scary thing. And if you listen to Hansen, he says we really don't know. It may not be kind of a gradual linear type thing. It may be a sudden point where melting just accelerates.
Well, I want to sound a hopeful note.
Yeah.
I really dug into the Pope's encyclical on the care of Mother Earth, and I was as encouraged as I've been in years and years, because he made it very clear there are groups all over the planet that have been working for years. And that's why the tipping point of 2001 came and went.
Yeah.
And now we're sitting at 2017, and you said we got to get it regulated by 2050?
Well, we've got to get it regulated right now.
Okay.
In order for the
Well, I agree.
effect to be in place by 2050.
I think the Pope's conclusion was we got to find some way to coordinate all this activity over the whole planet. There's all kinds of hopeful groups.
Yes.
They're really working. The word has gotten out, and there's more and more people who really believe we can do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe the tipping point we need is the mass of people shouting at our government officials in all countries that we must now do something before it is too late.
You know, And that's what we've been pushing for. We're up to 50,000. We have over 1,000 come DC every June. We're the largest organization lobbying Congress. Now, who else could affect this other than Congress? I mean, without it being a law, people are going to drive their Hummers.
What's the most progressive country in the management of climate issues?
Good question. There is a European country that's about to go 100% alternative energy, and I can't remember.
Yeah,
which one.
Sweden or Switzerland,
So I would
but
guess
Germany is very, very
Germany's
strong.
made a lot of progress.
But of course, they're backpedaling because we're dragging our feet.
Why are they backpedaling?
Because we're dragging our feet, and it's hard for them to be competitive if we continue
Yes.
producing with fossil fuels.
Capitalism, I get it.
There may be a few of us that would like to come to your monthly meetings. You said they're library?
Yes.
It's on a definite night each month?
Yes, and I brought a card if anybody would like to have one. We would so much, it is at noon on Saturday, the second Saturday of each
Do
month.
you feed us?
No, but we do bring cookies.
Bring snacks.
Would anyone else like a card?
The second Saturday, you said, of the month?
Yeah,
Yes,
second Saturday
yes,
of
sir.
every month.
And if you give me your email address, I would include you on the invitation. I would be thrilled to have
I have
that.
a question though.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the climate caucus in the House Republicans. Is there anything going on in the Senate?
No,
Yeah,
There's
that
not.
would be a useful.
but
place
there
to try
is
to-
the Climate Leadership Council. And they actually went and met with the White House. You know, James Baker, George Shultz were Reagan's secretaries of state. They're the old wise men, and they're 100% on board with it.
And there was a group in the Senate until the key player retired last year, or chose not to be in the Senate anymore. So the Senate has had a group, small,
Uh-huh.
but there was a group of Republicans there prior to the last election cycle.
The Sheldon White House, of course, is a real strong Democratic senator on the climate change issue.
Yeah, because if you can't get the legislators at the national level on board, other than trying to do major campaign and fight, you can't fight the fossil fuel industry,
It's just-
which can just shovel so much
Right.
money to create this disinformation. I
Right.
mean, there's a documentary out there called Merchants of Doubt, and
Yep.
they interview these guys that are,
Yep.
and people buy into that
Of course they
stuff.
do, yeah, and it's all lies.
So, yeah, you've got to pretty much go with convert the legislators or do
They're-
campaign finance.
That's what they're there for, and we've got to hold their feet to the fire, and we've got to keep meeting with them and build relationships with them, because they're certainly not going to listen to us if they hate our guts.
I also want to encourage you to go online, and there's Leo DiCaprio with the United Nations just created an excellent video called Before the Flood, hour and a half long. It's now on YouTube, free to see. It will really open your eyes to what's going on. And it's
Very,
not a
very
total
powerful.
downer. There are rays of hope, but mainly you can talk to other people more knowledgeably and understand what's happening better yourself if you get a chance to see that. Before the Flood.
I'm very grateful to you folks for listening to us today. It's
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
And we're out of time, but I hope we're not out of commitment. Let's get behind this.
Please do.
That's
Please.
every Saturday at the library?
Second Saturday of every month. Our next meeting is, here's can I put this up somewhere?
I leave it with Ken in the office and she'll get
Yeah,
it out.
okay, because this is a promotion of it, and the next one is May 13th, I think.
Yes, May 13th.
Yeah, so please come. We always have a good time.
Yeah, if you come around 11:45, we can get done in, and then we get to listen to a teleconference with someone nationally or internationally who is extremely
Huh?
knowledgeable.